Hello, good evening. Welcome everybody to the Portland, Maine Board of Education Finance, Personnel and Operations Committee meeting. It is, it is September 29th, 2025, 6:02 p.m. and we are just getting started for a great conversation. I am Sarah Bryden. I'm the chair of the committee. We also have with us board members Opperman and Sawtell, who are committee members. And we have a number of folks from district staff. We have Ryan Scallon, who is the superintendent, Lisa Beck from finance, Heather Peters, also from the finance department, Jennifer Slaving from HR, and Jen Brady, who we're going to get to meet during this meeting as well. So I'm excited that you all are with us. And right now I am going to check and see if we have anybody over on the attendee side. There are 0 attendees, and just to explain why I'm checking that, if there were any attendees, then I would open up I would explain the process for giving public comment. And the process for giving public comment is to raise your Zoom hand, and then I read the rules and the parameters and the guidelines for that. But there are 0 attendees, so I'm going to close public comment. And we are going to move forward and start talking about what we have on our agenda today. So we have an HR update. Oh my goodness, we are going to get updates on a number of items from our strategic plan, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 1.1. So great. We're going to get August financial report, and we are going to have a discussion about 5 policies that are relevant to this committee before they move over down the process to the policy committee. So with that, Dr. Scallon, I'm going to check and see if there's anything else you wanted to add and turn the presentation over to you and the rest of the staff.
That was perfect, Chair Bryden. I very much appreciate that. The one thing I would just love to check with you on for facilitation purposes is we were thinking around 10 to 15 minutes per topic, and then 10 to 15 minutes of questioning for human resources and equity, and then probably a little bit shorter for August financials, and then no presentation for the policy review, but discussion.
Okay. Yep, that sounds great. And just for clarity's sake, when you or anybody else who's presenting, when you have gotten to a point of like, okay, questions are happening now, please be super clear about that. And we will, us committee members will go to the Zoom hands and figure it out that way.
Great. And I'll try to just pay attention to time so that we don't run too late. Great. So with that, I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint and welcome Jennifer Slavink, our Executive Director of Human Resources and Equity, to start us.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the technical support on the other side. So great. So wanted to start with a little bit of just going back in time and talking a little bit about where we've been and what we've been working on. A lot like finance did. That was great. I think the last meeting. So getting to kind of revisit the work that's being done. So as you, I'm sure, remember, back in February, March, we did a restructuring of HR. And as a result of that, we were really looking to look at how we can improve our structures and how we can ensure that we are in compliance across the board. And so a lot of things that we've been doing since February and June that I want to highlight. We've been conducting some review of our FMLA and ADA practices, because what we found is that sometimes there wasn't consistency across the board in the implementation of those practices. And we wanted to make sure that not only that we were in alignment with the law and with our collective bargaining agreements, and that we were just consistent across our groups and across our staff, so that everyone was having the same experience if they were applying for some sort of leave or accommodation. We've re-engaged with our onboarding practices. And one of the things we've really talked about a lot, I know Jen Brady is a new member of the team, but can probably attest to this. We talk about customer service a lot, and really ensuring that as we're bringing new employees on, we are helping walk them through a process that hopefully makes them feel engaged and excited to work for Portland Public Schools, and also feels that we are respecting their time. So this really included a move to group onboarding, where we used to do individualized one-by-one onboardings. We've moved to a group onboarding to expedite that process a little bit. But also to make sure that they're not huge groups. So they're usually 5 to 10. So they're still small enough to meet people's individual needs, but also a little quicker for everyone. Also looked at how we can strengthen our hiring procedures. And I have to huge shout out to Liz Vaughn, who has really taken this one on. She's one of our new members of our team. And really looking at how are we getting requisitions through the process? What is that process? Also shout out to Lisa Beck, who has put together a very fine position control system, because that wasn't something that was in place before. And so we have a requisition process that takes those requisitions through a workflow, an approval workflow, ensures that we have a position control number, which ties that position to the budget and makes sure we're not over or understaffing anywhere. And then Liz sort of runs that through all the way through the posting of positions. And then when we get to that recommendation for hire, and then assigning them for onboarding. And then we've also moved our benefits enrollment to the digital platform in ADP. So not that it's had a couple of little kinks as we've gone through that, but we really felt strongly that we have this platform through ADP and we should be utilizing it. So as we hire new folks, we are having them do their initial benefits enrollment that way, with a goal toward moving to open enrollment digitally next year. All right. And then in May, we had another change. And so I just want to sort of call that out because as we know, there were some changes on our equity team. And so in May, the equity team, or the equity work, and that all the work that sat with the equity team, some of which quite honestly really feels like it was HR work to begin with. So all of that moved over into the HR department as well. So in May and June, we sort of started to work through a transition of that work. And some of the things that includes is, as listed here, certification for our teachers and ed techs, providing support, training, mentorship, making sure that we were continuing that CHRC compliance work and certification compliance work, looking at Vector and our PLBSS system, which is our professional learning based system primarily for our staff with certification to be able to track their salary contact hours to ensure that they can apply for recertification through the state. And also there's implications for the members of our teachers group on that collective bargaining agreement in terms of potential for lane and step changes down the road. This also includes work with pathways and pipelines and grants, Title IX, and as you're going to get to hear in much more depth later, the equity work that Jen Brady is now leading. Thank you, Ryan. And so as we look forward into this year, we wanted to really create some goals that were based on what we have learned during the last 6 to 8 months, right? So one, we're really working on development of our own internal auditing processes. So getting ahead of things instead of being reactive, we're trying to be more proactive, doing some pre-audits as we head into those payroll weeks, so that if there are any errors in our data input into ADP, we're catching those ahead of time as best as possible. We're also doing more robust audits on the back end. And so again, what that means is sometimes we're catching things that we're saying, oh, okay, we need to get ahead of this process and develop an SOP around it. And I will say it's still a lot better than where we were, I think, in the past, which is often we may not even know of something unless an employee let us know. So we're trying to get out ahead of that now, so that we are capturing any errors and correcting ahead of time. And as I already said, part of that then is also capturing that in our SOPs. So when we identify something where, okay, there was a little glitch here or something we found in that audit data, how can we modify our SOPs, our internal standards, so that we are ensuring that we have a process to make sure we're correcting that information, ideally entering it in correctly and catching it again ahead of any sort of payroll. Also working on revising our staff-facing SOPs. A lot of our SOPs have an internal HR component and then an external staff-facing component. And then other work that we've set ourselves up to work on this year is to review all of the job titles, working with finance on that, as well as our job descriptions, locating some of those and revising and making sure that those are up to date and current. We're also looking for opportunities to increase our professional growth for staff. And so really want to call out Rosa Torres, who has stepped in and is already working on developing some professional development opportunities for staff groups, and Jen Brady as well, so that we're including our ed techs and our base membership in some of our professional growth opportunities. We continue to look at the structure of our team, and as changes happen, we're always open to restructuring and making sure that we've got the right people doing the right work. And then, of course, one of our goal areas for the board is to make sure we're providing you with consistent updates. And so we have an update coming on October 27th as well. And that'll be an update in terms of where we are at for certifications. And now we're going to get to the initiatives. So we do have 4.5 initiatives that live under HR. There's 4 under 4.1 through 4.4, and then 1.1 sort of is this hybrid. It lives under HR. It lives everywhere. Really, it should. It's equity work. It should live across the district, not just in one department. And I know Jen will talk to that later. So I'm going to not do too much time probably on these few slides because Jen will be going further in depth. Oh no, you're going further in depth with 1.1, Jen. Okay, so 4.1, also Jen Brady leading that, is around the vision of excellence and sort of revisiting and refining that work. So the starting point is last year's work. There was some great work done, work group pulled together, and a lot of time and energy and attention to build that initial vision of excellence. And so now the work is around revisiting it, making sure it's right, and that it represents Portland Public Schools in the way we want it to. And the things that I know you've all probably heard before, that what does it look like, sound like, feel like? And we really want to get to that, the deep part of this, right? What does it look like, sound like, and feel like to work in Portland Public Schools? When we look at that vision of excellence, we want to make sure that it's not just words on a page, but that it comes off of that page. So we'll be looking for what can make that actionable. And also, how are we ensuring that we're holding ourselves accountable and being accountable to our community, right? We serve the families and the students and the community that we serve. How can we ensure that we are really exhibiting that vision of excellence in everything we do? So for 4.1, some long-term goals. We have this shared vision. We want everyone on our team to feel valued, affirmed, effective, and supported. And really, as we go through all 4 of these initiatives, they're so nicely woven together because they really all build on this common theme of supporting staff and families. We want this vision to be internalized. So we want the members of our PPS community to really deeply understand them and to be engaging with our community and our students and families with this vision of excellence in our minds at all times. In terms of key deliverables, there's going to be some work being done to go to our sites and to really engage in conversations to hear what our staff are thinking about the look like, feel like, sound like pieces of this, and really collecting that data and looking for those commonalities so that we can identify what are the I think the bullet point says it, what are the core themes that we're seeing across our campuses, across our employee groups. And then moving that forward again into that actionable space of really being explicit about it and ensuring that it's part of our meetings, that it's when we're doing our onboarding, that we're talking to this vision of excellence, and that our staff recognition has a tie into that as well. And last slide, I think on this one is just some pretty intentional measures, is that we want 70% of our staff to, by the end of the year, to be able to be aware of what the vision of excellence is and how it connects to their work. We want to be at a place by the end of the year where every single new hire, as part of their onboarding experience, is getting connected to the vision of excellence as well as to all of our equity work. And at least 50% of our staff report that they acknowledge that the recognition that we're doing is really explicitly tied to the vision of excellence. And again, that looks like, sounds like, feels like piece. As we go into initiative 4.2, Rosa Torres, who is our director of recruitment and staff development, she's really leading that work around our recruitment, retention, and pipeline development. So some things that she's got going on is working on starting up an EdTech Spotlight group. And the point of that is to really look at what we're doing for professional training for our ed techs. I know she's been working with Jen Cooper, who's the president of the Ed Tech Union, to really look at where those opportunities are to support our ed techs, and also to help make sure that they're getting the hours they need for recertification, really supporting their overall professional growth. And then where they have interest and desire to move forward and to potentially go into a teaching role, we also want to make sure we're supporting that work and providing appropriate professional development for that. Also looking at PLAN, the Portland Leadership and Advancement Network, moving to phase 1 and supporting some of our staff who may be looking to move into administration. And so she's in the initial design phases of that and looking to get something launched in January. And then, we've had this Elevating Educators grant for a long time. The funding on that is running out. And so she is in the winding down process with that grant and making sure that everything is appropriately closed out by June of 2026 with a support or with a shift. So a lot of that has been focused on tuition reimbursement. And so we're really looking at how we can move it over to leadership development, pipeline, and pathway work to be more aligned with what we have in the strategic plan. All right, and then the long-term goals for that one, again, having a sustainable leadership pipeline. So really wanting to help if you are a teacher and you're looking to become an assistant principal, or you're a current assistant principal looking to become a principal, ed techs into teachers, whatever that growth may be for people who are looking for pipeline and pathway opportunities. That's one of our goals. And then really looking at our ed techs in particular and how we can support our ed techs with professional growth opportunities, and hoping that down the road either leads to career advancement if they're interested, but if they are not interested in becoming a teacher, like, we need great ed techs and we have great ed techs. So how can we help develop their skills and strengthen our retention within our district? And our deliverables around that, again, in November, the startup of that EdTech Spotlight group, the phase 1 of our leadership trainings in January of 2026, and then again, that closing out of that Elevating Educators grant by the end of the year. Okay, he moved that one along quickly, so I think that my time is going through. 4.3 is around our onboarding, and so starting today, Bridget Wheeler, who we brought on into HR in February, was promoted to being our new Director of Compliance, which is great. We need somebody who can really hone in on some of that work for us. And so she's going to be supporting that work. Again, as we look at what we're going to do with that, Bridget and I have been having conversations around what do other great organizations do? What are the ways that they recruit and onboard folks? And how do they help support people so that their retention rates are high? And we want to aspire to be like those best organizations. We think Portland Public Schools is a great place to work, and we want everyone to know that. She is launching within the next week or maybe 2. We've just got some new software ready to go, or almost ready to go. So she'll be launching these 30, 60, 90-day surveys for all of our new staff that started at the end of August, and really getting some data collected around what has worked in supporting them and what they would have liked or what would help in the future. So we'll be collecting that and then being able to review that data and look for trends as we look to refine our work. She's also supporting the development of these stay surveys and exit interviews. And again, this is all about being reflective and looking for ways, what do we need to do better? How do we do better? We are looking to continue moving toward a digitized experience. So we have had a little bit of a delay with our onboarding experience. It's ready to go, and we're kind of in the test environment, just trying to work out a couple of things there, but really want to be able to work to something that makes it more convenient, and again, expedites the process for our new hires. And she will be helping lead this very thorough work around taking our SOPs and our staff handbooks and any of the materials that we have, and looking at what do we have, how do we revise it, how do we ensure that we are being as transparent as possible with staff, so that that everyone knows where to go to find the answers that they need, and that they have that information at their fingertips. So our goals for 4.3, We want all of our new hires and our current employees, of course, too, to feel welcome and supported. We want them to have the information they need when they come into Portland Public Schools so that they can like step into that first day of their job and feel ready to go and comfortable. And if they aren't sure what to do, they know who to go to. So that is partly through this onboarding experience with ADP, which will move us to a digital onboarding process. Our staff handbooks being revised, updated, and being a nice, thorough, and transparent place for people to access information. And again, using those surveys to guide our work and help us know where we can improve our practices. And 4.4, this is our final one that I'm speaking to, which is around continuous improvement around evaluation systems and ensuring that we are holding all of our staff accountable to the high standards that we have in our district. So we are starting with our non-bargaining teams, not everyone in non-bargaining, but most of our non-bargaining, our central office and network team non-bargaining members. We brought a group together this summer to have a work group and to create this evaluation pilot. And we're September 30th, tomorrow is one of the deadlines. So I know everybody on this call has been hard at work having their meetings. I've had my meeting both as someone being evaluated. Thank you, Ryan. And I've had most of my meetings with my direct reports. And really, we have a focus on starting with a rubric for self-reflection and then doing goal setting. And then the design of this is to ensure that we're regularly connecting with either our supervisors or those that we supervise so that everyone has opportunities for support and growth. And that if things are not working or anyone's struggling, we don't get so far down the road that it becomes hard to pivot. So again, this is for our central office and network teams. And then the goal during the 25-26 school year is to have some work groups to work on development and revision of our evaluation systems for PAA, which is our administrators, and BASE. And then to be able to pilot those tools in the 26-27 school year. And then during the 26-27 school year, we'll be convening work groups to work on our EdTech, SEC, teachers and adult ed, and then again to implement those pilot tools in the 27-28 school year to follow. So that is what we're doing with Initiative 4.4. And I think we just have one more slide before questions. So again, long-term goals, we want to make sure that people are getting timely feedback, relevant feedback, that people have opportunity to get coached, and that it is a collaborative process so that we can ensure that everyone's on the same page as we're moving through our work. And want to make sure that our staff have opportunity where necessary to access professional development opportunities. And again, like linking all these things back, looking at 4.2, where we want people to have opportunities if there are future job opportunities for them. We want them to be able to be going through some pipeline work to develop their skill set for whatever comes next in their trajectory. Our deliverables for 25-26, again, is this pilot evaluation cycle for non-bargaining, that'll be completed this year. And that we'll have tools ready for our base employees and our PAA employees for them to implement in a pilot format in 26-27. And I think the next slide is going to be like a bookmark slide to let you know that's my stuff. I think I got it in under 15 minutes, I hope. And I'm ready for whatever questions you may have. I hope.
Are we pausing for questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Super. So that was not 15 minutes, but I don't know if anybody could have delivered all of that content in less time. Good job. That was a lot. For some reason, I don't seem to have the ability in Zoom to move board member Noor over from the attendees side to the panelist side. So if somebody could do that, that'd be great.
Yep, I will do it now.
Thank you. Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Slabnik. It's really, really, really good. Lots and lots of stuff in there. I have a couple of questions. One, where would one find the vision of excellence on the website so that, I mean, I was trying to figure out what it was when I was reading over the notes ahead of time, and I was at a loss because we're doing so many changes with our stuff. So, is it short? Is it long? Is it?
So I can see Jen Brady too. So I don't know if she wants to answer, but what I think I'm going to have to go turn on my light. I did this last meeting too. Jen, do you want to talk about, because it's still sort of in draft format, so I don't know if Jen, you want to talk about your thinking on
Right.
timeline while I turn on
It
my over.
is not,
Have an idea.
yep, it's not on the website currently. So it's in development. And so timeline wise, we're looking at probably January to have a draft that is more fully fleshed out and will be usable for our accountability and kind of day-to-day practices.
Okay, all right, that's looking forward to that. And I'm really, really pleased about all the work with EdTechs. They deserve the attention. And some of them need it, and the teachers need them to have that attention as well, because I know from what I've heard. The question, I had two questions looking, exit interviews, I was looking at the list. I'm sorry if I'm taking so many questions at one time, but Jane, but hang on, I'm almost done. The people who have decided to go on elsewhere in their profession or non-professional experiences. I wondered if we did exit interviews on those individuals, all of them or any of them, and would love to hear at some point what they were, what their feedback was. And you won't have it now. And the one thing I do have a question on is we're moving stuff in-house, which as far as professional growth opportunities, not a bad thing. If are we ensuring that those opportunities fit the certification for the state? Because if you take a course at USM or SMCC, they kind of like, oh, state goes, oh, check, that's done. But to make sure that that's kind of good to go. So I was wondering who would be doing the training on those items.
Yeah, so great question. So regarding exit interviews, I will just simply say that that's part of the goal of the process this year, right? Oh, I don't know where you just went. Oh, there you are, Julian. Something changed on the screen and everyone moved. So yeah, Julian, the one of the goals is to really develop a more cohesive process for exit interviews. We do them now, but it really is more request based. So if I know someone's leaving and we engage, I offer, or they will reach out and ask. And so I definitely have conducted exit interviews for sure. But it's really a more informal process right now. And so I think that our goal is to make it something that, one, where we're at least at a minimum getting some anonymous survey data from anybody who's leaving, and opening the door during that survey collection to say to people, if you want to talk more in depth, and obviously there's no anonymity to that, but if you want to talk more in depth, I'm happy to meet with people. And so that'll be part of the process that we're, sort of in development and that Bridget and I are talking about. In terms of the internal courses, yeah, I mean, part of the process is making sure that courses go through an approval process. So whether it's through our PLBSS system or whether it's working with ROSA on some of the mentorship opportunities, EdTechs is a little different, but ensuring that people, like right now, I will say one of the things that's been hard for our EdTechs is that they maybe have not had the same level of access or training to utilize Vector, or maybe not everything they're doing is being entered into Vector. And so then we have ed techs who've like attended all of this professional development and had all these training opportunities during the last year, but none of it's being captured. And so then when they go, they're ready to move forward and renew their certification, they're having to sort of scramble to pull everything together. And so what we're really trying to do is to look for, one, how can we capture the things that are already happening, in terms of professional development for our staff and our ed techs in this particular example. And then also, how can we increase the level of professional development that we're offering, both, the quantity of PD that we're offering, but also the quality of what we're offering to folks and making sure that it's relevant. So ideally, we're trying to get it to a place where we can capture that differently, so that when we're recommending people to the state for renewal of their certification, it's a little easier and it's kept somewhere in a better way. Yeah.
Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Hi, I have like 4 windows open, and so I'm sorry if I'm going to be jumping around a bit. So one of my questions was about if the vision of excellence is written down anywhere. That was answered. There was something that's talked about job titles and job descriptions. This is something I keep harping back on, I think. as revised, will those someday be available for the general public to see?
Oh my gosh, yes, please, right? I definitely think that we need to be transparent about all of our job descriptions. And I like fully acknowledge there's a couple I've seen where I've been like, oh, it's kind of old and we want to update and revise this. And so I think that'll also involve engagement with the people who are in those roles who can also help us to understand what the current work is, right? Because as we know, with the advance of technology, even something that 5 years ago, a 5-year-old job description might look different given different systems at this point. So yes, and yes, I absolutely would like us to have here's where all the job descriptions are. So if you're interested in working for Portland Public Schools, you can go here, you can read them and determine what might be the right fit for you. Yes, yes, and a big yes.
Thanks. I'm curious about site-based facilitated dialogue and data capture. You mentioned that. Is that, I just would like to know what that looks like. Is that going to be consistent from school to school? Is it something that schools are going to be asked to devise for themselves, or how is that reported out?
I see a big smile on Jen Brady's face. This is hers, so I'm going to let her talk to that.
Okay.
The thinking right now is that, yes, I'll go out to the school sites and facilitate dialogue, capture through kind of affinity diagram or group conceptual mapping, capture people's ideas around what are they currently doing that is upholding and showcasing the values that we hold dear at PPS. And then also kind of brainstorming around more about what do we want to see, what is kind of the special sauce or the essence of PPS, so that we're capturing that. So it's going to be me going out to sites, collecting in affinity diagramming, graffiti wall kind of style to get as much input as we can from educators and administrators, ed techs, front office staff, the whole team. That's the plan as it stands right now. I might maybe if you're thinking maybe that sounds like it's crazy, then I'm open to hearing that feedback too.
No, I'm thinking you're just meeting me, but one of the things I really struggle with is different people's jargon. I have no idea what affinity diagramming means.
Sure. So it's like putting sticky notes on large chart paper that gives words that make you think about the values and the actions that we hold dear in PPS. So literally sticky notes, writing sticky notes and putting it on a large piece of paper. And then what we do from there is group them and pull out the themes.
And that's something that would happen like in a Wednesday PD session?
Unsure right now. I think sometimes it'll be Wednesday PD and other times I'm just going to go to the school sites when they are available to have people be present. This intersects with another goal that we have in HR to be more present in the school site buildings. So I'm scheduling with school sites right now just so that we can cross over the work that we're doing.
Okay. Thank you. I'm concerned. I think it was just the way it was written, maybe in the presentation, because I was reading it earlier and jotting down notes, but it almost seems like, and I'm worried about this message going out to teachers specifically, but that it seems like we're emphasizing that if you're a good leader, a promotion would be from teacher to assistant principal. Or, if you're a good leader, a promotion would be from principal to, a position above that. And I'm really all about student facing staff and the fact that we need really good leaders in the classroom facing students. So I'm worried that message is going to go out to ed techs, to teachers, to people who are really in the trenches with the kids every single day, that they should be seeking a higher ground or a loftier goal than working with students. And That just worries me. Most of the teachers I know right now are pretty demoralized and frustrated and kind of feel like their work is devalued. And I'm very conscious of messages that go out to them. So that's not really a question. I'm just saying that's the way in that presentation, that's the way that read to me. And it just really stuck in my craw.
So
Um,
do you
yep.
mind? Yeah, because I know it's not a question, but I also really want to speak to that. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that being in the school site, anytime I've pivoted over to a central office role, I'm always like, oh, it's not where the action is at, right? The action is in the classroom supporting students. And Rosa and I, who's overseeing some of this work, actually, we're just talking today about some ways that she's sort of shifting the ways some of the work had been done in the past, because at the end of the day, it's about the students. So I don't want to say what we were talking about because nothing's locked in yet, and we're fingers crossed that she's going to have some productive meetings this week, and I'll be able to share some other stuff with you about that. But I say that because I think the intention behind that is, we know, like, I absolutely agree with you. We have people who are in the classroom as ed techs or as teachers, and they're doing amazing work, and we want them to keep doing the amazing work. We also know that we know, because people talk to us about this, right? That we have ed techs who do aspire to being teachers. We have teachers who do aspire to moving into site administration, or a specialized administration, special education, or whatever that may be. And we really want to ensure that we are, that we're developing our Portland Public Schools people who we think are really fabulous people, and that we're creating opportunities within our organization where we know if we have a really amazing ed tech who wants to become a teacher, how do we support them internally so that we don't lose them to another district who's able to provide some opportunity? Then we've lost not only a great ed tech, but we've lost someone who's become potentially a really great teacher. And likewise, I mean, I can just speak from an HR end. We've got a lot of fabulous new administrators. I'm really excited about some of the people that have come through the office. And we know that some of them aren't very far along in their training. And so they're far enough along to be moved into the role they're in. And how can we help identify people who might be in the classroom right now and say, I want to be an assistant principal at some point, or I want to be, like I said, assistant director of special ed, or whatever they're dreaming of for their future professional growth. How can we find ways and create pathways internally here in Portland Public Schools to support those folks? It's not meant to diminish the work that anyone else is doing, but we know we have staff who have like these ideas of where they want to go, and there are staff whose ideas and goals are out of the classroom. So how can we successfully support those people who've expressed that interest? And I think hopefully it's in there somewhere else. I'm sorry if the way it was written came off the wrong way, but I hope it's also evident in the presentation and in what I shared, that it's not just those groups. It's also, how are we enhancing and ensuring that we have more robust professional development for the staff who are in those roles now, so that as they're looking toward, their own growth or toward recertification or whatever that is. Ed tech's being a great example of a group of staff that I'm not sure we've done enough to support. And Jen's going to be supporting, Jen and I will be working together to do some support for some professional growth for our base members, because also, like, there was some PD in August, and we had some of our clerical staff, our lead admin folks, who were like, we want more of this. So part of what you're hearing from us is also us trying to answer to what we're hearing, which is we want more. And we want more for the roles we're in, or we want more because we are looking at professional advancement down the road. And so we're trying to answer all of those different calls. I hope that was helpful. And again, I'll look back at the slides. I apologize if the way it was written came across as only prioritizing or valuing one thing, because that's not the message at all.
Thanks. I have a ton of questions, but I know there's time check, so I'm gonna step up.
Okay. And I will simply say that I want to just express gratitude for all of the work that was captured in that summary. I appreciate the fast talking. That was very helpful as well. And just as I'm assuming that this is already on the plan, but I'm so curious to be hearing, in future meetings, data, both short-term and long-term, in terms of, we're doing all this work and then yielding results. And, hearing about that, I'm super excited. So thank you very much. And I think no more Zoom hands. I think we can move on, and we're at 6:41. So here we go.
Is this my section? Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm just making sure that this is me. Yes. Okay. I'm so glad to be here with you all. I'm Jen Brady. I am a PPS parent, so it's really lovely to see my board member Opperman on the call too. I have a daughter at Rowe, a son at Deering, and started in this position as Director of People and Culture August 11th. And so you are getting my real-time thinking and planning on our equity work. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to be a shepherd of the equity work. I even hesitate to say lead because, like Jennifer mentioned, this work is across all of the work that we do. And so part of my role is to ensure that all of the folks that we're working with, everyone is getting connected to our equity work. And so I would love to share with you kind of where we've been, kind of our background on what I've gathered so far, and then talk a little bit about the plan for this year as it is right now. So Strategic Initiative 1.1, just to refresh your memory, is to develop and implement a plan to advance staff mindsets and cultural humility to support equitable outcomes for students and families. So we're really doing a deep dive to invest in that work. We're going to be building upon strengths. And so this gives a little bit of the attuned organizational diagnostic. That is the background research that informed our strategic plan. What we know is we've got some really good things going for us, like more than 85% of staff say in the 2023 survey that leaders are working to advance equity. It's actually 88%. We also know that families report that schools feel welcoming. And overall, we've got 75% of staff saying that they feel a sense of belonging, although it is more white staff members than staff members of color that are reporting that. So we're building upon some really great things. And to me, what that shows is that we believe in equity, which is great because that's what we've got at the center of our strategic plan. But we're also going to be addressing some challenges. So that's the next slide. Thank you. Some of the challenges that we're looking at one comes from the Educators of Color report from 2021, where we know that many of our educators of color face barriers. And so some of the language from that Educators of Color report was an impenetrable wall of whiteness and the smog of cultural racism. So that's a challenge that we're sitting with. We also know from the attuned diagnostic that staff know that we're doing equity work, but they want to see consistent, prioritized, and actionable work. There's a sense that we sometimes take on too many initiatives, and so staff are asking that we really have a focus and that we're prioritizing equity. We know that there are still inequitable student outcomes and experiences across student subgroups, and that there are gaps in honors-related courses like AP participation across schools and racial subgroups. So those are some of the challenges that we're starting from. I'm sure there are more. These are the ones that are kind of bubbling up, that have bubbled up for me. So here's the focus. As I'm new to PPS and I really want to learn how we can be building more clear daily actions so that we are seeing equity in action, where we're not only focused on our beliefs, but also on what we are doing. And so here are the ways that we're planning to address that. One, we will revisit the baseline to ensure clarity. So I'm going back to look at where was our data, where were we starting from when we made this strategic initiative 1.1, and really ensure that I can understand what has been done and what's missing. I'm doing my best to capture all that as quickly as I can, but I want to make sure that we've got that. We're going to deepen the training for leaders and staff, and then make sure we've got a plan simultaneously to be identifying and modeling the behaviors of equity and cultural humility. So we want to see what those activities, those daily actions, words, actions, what are those behaviors? And then we'll realign the measures so that we can track impact. And I can talk through each one of these on the next slides. Okay, thanks, Ryan. So to revisit the baseline, we really want to take stock of what's been done and then make sure that we've got shared definitions and clarity on what the outcomes should be. So I'm currently working on understanding what has happened with the equity professional learning and support and outcomes across PPS. I think that there is a need to figure out what we need here. We've got an equity definition from our board policies. We've got equity is clearly defined, but what I want to move toward is understanding what does equity look like in practice at the leadership level, at the teacher level, in the operations levels. Anyone who is working within PPS, we want to see what are the behaviors of equity and cultural humility in action. And so in order to do that, we have to get clear on what our definitions are. What do we mean by equity behaviors? What do we mean by cultural humility? And similar to the vision of excellence language, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What are those actions? And then part of my interest here in the baseline work is to clarify that cascading link between educator and adult behaviors to mindsets and how that moves toward equitable outcomes for students and families. So that's kind of the theory of action, if you will, that if we're focusing on behaviors, then we're influencing mindsets, and that moves towards equitable outcomes for students. A little bit further down the road. We can do the next slide. And so one of the things that we're doing is continuing to deepen the training with leaders and staff. So we've got a series of role-specific trainings that are really designed to both move cultural humility and also retain high expectations for all learners. This is work that was already underway as I got started, and it's really exciting. As I understand it, this is the first time that we have done a full alignment of our training series. So, and we're all focused on the same direction of equity and cultural humility. So it's pretty cool. There will be 4 trainings for each group over the course of the year. The different groups are instructional leaders. So that's our school administrators, principals, assistant principals, in addition to our central office staff that are more focused on instruction. Then we have operational leaders. So that's our facilities, food service, transportation. They are also getting training. And then we have teachers. And so that's working across grade levels. So each of those groups will be receiving equity-focused training. I'll go back to the instructional leaders. This is work the instructional leaders and operational leaders will be engaged in trainings with the Leadership Academy, And those themes differ for each group. So the instructional leaders are going to be really talking about how to be a leader, setting high expectations for all learners, how to use data to strengthen the culturally and linguistically responsive instruction, and things along those lines that are really focused on instructional leaders, equity behaviors of instructional leaders. For the ops leaders, we're taking an approach also led by the Leadership Academy, but the themes are really around building a sense of belonging, deepening relationships, and creating inclusive environments so that we've got opportunities for culturally responsive and cultural humility across staff and students. And then the network teams will be leading also 4 trainings for teachers. And that is where we're really focusing on instruction. So focusing on increasing multilingual learners' access to grade level texts, increasing teachers' skills and comfort with cultural and linguistic responsive instruction, all based on high quality instructional materials, and developing the academic language and vocabulary of our multilingual learners. So where all of these things are happening in tandem with different groups of learners across our system. It, to me, seems like it's just pretty exciting. And the different people that I've spoken to so far are really thrilled about this alignment. So, so it feels noteworthy. Okay, I can keep going because in addition to getting the trainings, doing all the trainings, then we're also going to be simultaneously working on identifying and modeling what equity and cultural humility behaviors are. And so this, I brought you a little research blurb that I like to touch back to from Stephanie Creary that says, mindset change starts with behavior change. Oftentimes we think about mindset, changing mindset first, and that will influence behavior. And maybe that's so, but current research is really suggesting the alternative, that we want to really focus on behavior, and that will shift, that will start to strengthen mindsets. So we're going to do that by conducting a listening tour. I'm talking to 10 to 15 different people across the system to really understand what are our current policies and practices and surface examples of equity behaviors. So I'm asking questions like, what does equity look like from a leadership lens? Or what does a leader who is focused on equity do in this situation? What does that sound like? What are you actually doing? So we can start surfacing behaviors that already exist in the system, because I'm sure they exist, but we just haven't captured them anywhere. So we're starting to really elevate that. In conjunction with the vision of excellence development, so like I mentioned earlier, going out to sites, I want to maximize the time of the sites and the site leaders. So I don't want to be going there several times with different asks, like, let's talk about vision of excellence today. Let's talk about equity tomorrow. Oh, and HR is coming just to make sure that you know that we are here for you. I don't want to do it over multiple visits to each school site. I think that's going to be draining for them. So we're trying to streamline and create, less is more, a less is more type of approach where we can think about what already exists and tap into them. So we'll be doing some equity behavior workshops and working with leaders and staff to really articulate what those equity behaviors are in conjunction with what does it look like and feel like to be a valued member of PPS. And then starting with leaders, we'll reflect those behaviors back and really capture those daily practices with some guidance on how to embody those practices. Just kind of keeping that cycle going. Okay, sorry, next slide. I saw you click. And then I'm sure you're interested in the measurement. And so this is what this is the current thinking. We definitely want to measure our progress here. And so behavior is much easier to monitor and track than mindset shift. So that's another reason why I really want to focus on behaviors, because we can actually track that. So we're first this year looking for 100% of leaders and teachers engaged in their 4 professional learning sessions. We already have 100% participation in the first session that occurred in August. So we're already on great track to meet this one. We want exit surveys and reflections to capture the shifts of those leaders and teachers in their assumptions and practices. And then we're aiming for leaders consistently modeling at least one behavior that speaks to equity and cultural humility. That will have to be of self-report this year, so that we can, because we're just introducing the idea, but we won't be able to be out and observing just yet, because this will probably happen near the end of the year, that we're really getting the behaviors moved into the leadership groups. Where this is going, at least as I'm thinking of it right now, where this is going is that we're going to be moving systems where equity behaviors are embedded in our district and school procedures, in our group meeting structures, in our one-on-one coaching sessions, in our written communications and emails, so that we should be seeing evidence of equity behaviors across our ways of being. That our staff sense of belonging improves by 20%, especially for staff of color. And as we kind of work on this cascade of investing in the adults in the system, and investing in the leaders that are investing in the teachers that are then investing in the students, what we anticipate seeing is increased student outcomes. And the one I listed here is increased participation in advanced coursework. So that's the way I'm thinking about it at this stage of the game. I think that's my last slide. Ryan, can you confirm that's the last slide? Yes. So I am open to questions. Thank you. Yes, Board Member Opperman. Thank you.
Thank you. That was comprehensive, and I think it's got a lot of very, very good thinking and a lot of good planning, and we all on the board appreciate anyone trying to tell us if it's working or not. And as Chair Bryden mentioned in the last piece. And you're absolutely, you and the research is right. You can't change mindset, but you can demonstrate or identify situations. And I want to broaden the equity piece in a couple ways as you look at it. One that has very interesting in the position a person has within the school system. For example, teachers or other people's attitudes towards ed techs. And I bring this up because of an experience I had running a group on just a multi-level group, and in my own practice a few years back, where we were discussing and we were bringing up stuff that had to do with special ed situations, and unconsciously or consciously, but I accept unconsciously, individuals in the group who were teachers did not give space to the comments that were being made by the ed techs, who actually really, really well educated in it. So, and an interesting, because of that, I think, as I'm thinking this through, waiting to think this, ask this question, in the school district, where are the people of color? In what roles do they have in the building? And are we compounding 2 things at one time? So just a thought of my experience that I would love to share. And the other piece of equity is I've heard when I was walking around the district and when I talk to people, is special education for students in special education. And the assumption that assumptions, expectations. I mean, expectations of students is a big piece of it. And I was talking to a row parent today who was talking about gifted and talented. And the fact is that who gets picked to be tested for gifted and talented? And so, again, that is related to cultural differences, perhaps. But and when we went and visited, Ryan and I and Sarah Lentz visited students at high school, we were having the male-female gender situation going on in math class. And I've heard of individuals where the a daughter and a son, the daughter was not headed into math, but the son was headed into higher math. And so, those things happen consciously or unconsciously. And I think identifying those will help. So I'm talking to your stuff. All this, you're doing it. I just want to reaffirm that this is a really, really important cross-cultural situation that I don't know that all people recognize in and out of the school system. So that's
Thank
it.
you.
That's my
Thank-
2 cents.
Thank you. And one thing that I think is pretty interesting and cool is that I'm also leading, like Jennifer said, 4.1, which is really about all staff feeling valued, affirmed, effective, and supported. And so that speaks to a broader sense of belonging. So I think these two initiatives really mesh so well together that we're building simultaneously.
I'm
So,
looking forward to it all.
yeah, thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Board
Yeah.
Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm going to be really brief. How is the sense of belonging measured? Is it just a question like, do you feel like you belong, as an important member of the staff? Like, what is that data?
It's a survey item. It's a survey item on our staff engagement survey, I believe. So it is something like that. Do you feel like you belong? That's something that I'll be digging into and when we are assessing our measures and how we actually measure this.
Thank you. In the idea about more students having access to AP courses, in the vision of the Portland schools or whoever's, setting those goals, does the word completion was used, does the completion of AP coursework also include taking the AP exam?
Can I just jump in here?
Yes, please.
So that was a goal that was set by the board as part of the strategic plan. So advanced coursework is not just AP. It is dual enrollment. It is industry credentials through paths. It is any of those things. One of the things that was debated in that process is about what defined it for AP. And I have to go back and look at my notes for that. I don't have them in front of me. But I don't believe it had to do with the course or the test.
The test.
but
I
I'm not
agree with
100%.
you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's right. And what we really want is access and the high expectations to be enrolled in those types
So
of programs and courses.
I would just suggest that in setting that as a goal, that maybe AP isn't used as the standard for that, but in fact, an honors course or an advanced career program or something like that, because AP classes are not for everyone. And in my experience, long experience as a teacher and also the parent of 4 kids, it was just about passing the test. The whole course was about passing the test, and my kids will tell you they learned a lot more in classes that weren't driven toward that. So I understand it. It certainly looks bad. It is bad that our AP classes are so monochromatic. But I just would love to see us setting other high level goals for students than that. Dual enrollment, way more valuable in my experience, both as a parent, as a teacher. And then just really quickly, just to say that listening to you talk about the role specific trainings, I think that was the term you used. To me, the first place to start with every single role is what you were describing as the training for operational leaders. I'm not sure that people can get to academic equity without knowing how to, set up a welcoming, equitable classroom. And we might have to take a step back and reteach some of that. I mean, a lot of our teachers come from an environment, an education, and a background where that wasn't a priority, you know, setting up a welcoming classroom and building relationships. And you might just need to revisit that before you move forward.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Agreed. And I know that a lot of work has been done in the district with mindset, with belonging. But again, that's part of the first part of the plan, is figuring out where people are, what have they done, and where do we need to do some of that reteaching. So I appreciate that.
I also want to thank you for the presentation. It is tough to be brief on this topic. My goodness. I have two things that I made a note of that I want to ask about. So the first one is that last slide that you were sharing, the self-report behavior of equity by the end of the year. I'm curious about whether there's an opportunity to ask that question in direct connection with, like, tell us about a behavior of equity that you did and how it impacted students, like to get that neural pathway going for people, you know, and you know, what did you do? And like, hey, look, it helped, you know, and like that kind of making that connection. And don't want to tell you how to do your job, but I think that would be a really interesting thing to explore maybe. Um, and that, so that's not really a question, but it's just a, you know,
Oh,
just
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
but then the other thing that I noted is an actual question from slide 20, the operational training. And it may, I don't know if I missed it or misunderstood. I didn't see ed techs on there.
Ed techs, I think, are going with the teachers. So
Okay.
but they're embedded with the teacher training.
Great, because so like as a blanket statement, and I don't doubt that this is already the approach, but I would want to make sure that everybody that is student facing is going to be getting this training, whether it's like phase one or whatever. But like, I think it's just super important that everybody who's working with students gets access to these concepts. So I appreciate it. And also acknowledging you're less that, I mean, we're in single digit weeks that you've been with us. So I really appreciate that you are like, you know, off to the races with this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. So happy to be here.
Okay, I think we are ready for finance.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'll slides up in just a moment. All right, there we go. All right, so we'll start off with revenues through August. So the district has collected 16.2% of its local budgeted revenues for the year, slightly less than what it would be if we evenly split it over all the months, but that's not atypical. August is generally going to be a little bit slower. So as we move into September, we expect adult ed and food service will actually have those revenues pick up a bit. Grant revenue to date is totaled 371,000. Again, it's much slower during the summer, so we would anticipate those numbers starting to go up with September as those title and IDEA funds get put to use. Next slide, please. All right. We have received 2 new grants. The CTE Middle School grant for just over 20,000 was provided to provide middle school students with a hands-on CTE experience. Kevin Stilfen, our director of PASS, will be leading that work, and he's creating CTE clubs at Lincoln and King Middle Schools with those funds. And then the adult ed team has received a United Way grant for 22,000, which they'll be using to develop healthcare professionals. Lastly, I do want to call out, we talked in last month's presentation about the Maine Learning Technology Initiative that we're using to purchase devices for both students and staffs. The state has reimbursed us so far 336,000 out of the total 354 expended. We expect the rest next month, but do just want to note that most of that money has returned to the district. So here's our revenue numbers to go along with the commentary I just gave, showing the 16.2% collected by fund. From an expenditures standpoint, we're right on track. We've expended 14% of our budget for the year. We do have a larger purchase of 392 in other grants. Most of that is the 354 that I mentioned in the previous slide around that main learning technology initiative for the devices. We also, as we talked about in July, have seen lower personnel expenses in August since summer was still happening, and then supplies are going to be higher than normal as schools geared up to start the new year. So those will level off as we move forward. Lastly, I just want to note that debt service is going to show higher than average just due to the timing of the loan repayments. The debt schedule this year had the first payment in August, whereas in past years it was in October. And so that's why you'll see those numbers a little different. So if we can show the next slide, here's the actual numbers that I spoke about. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is the by category view. So this is where you can see what I mentioned. We're at 13% for personnel, 28% for supplies. So one's a little lower than expected, one's a little higher, but they will even out. All right, we have made some updates within the FY26 budget that we do need to recommend to the board for approval this evening. These transfers within the FY26 budget are being made to move savings within the personnel category to other categories where those funds are needed. Primary drivers here are we did budget an increase for salary expenses, and it actually came in just due to bargaining slightly lower than what we had originally budgeted. So we do have some personnel savings there. And then the vacancy rate is running at about 5%. We budgeted at just under 1%. So we have some savings there from those vacancies as we start the year. In some cases, we are using contracted services to cover vacancies, particularly in the special education. And so we're needing to move funds from personnel to contracted services in order to cover that work. And then we have personnel savings from some of these vacancies and the lower than expected increase that are being used to offset a few of our unbudgeted non-personnel expenditures, the two largest being Yonder at 115,000 and cybersecurity monitoring at 249,000. And then lastly, we had 30K that we need to move from supplies to other costs to cover the main state billing fees. This is third-party billing for the special ed department, and it did increase this year from 10% to 11% of those payments that has to be paid to the state. So if we go to the next slide, I have a view of
Lisa,
these.
can I jump in?
Yes.
Can I jump in real quick? Just because this will be two things. One is that what we're showing here is just an up-to-date of where our budget is and where we've needed to make adjustments relative to what was budgeted. It is not actually asking for an increase or a change in the overall budget, but is just where salaries were slightly lower and we have some increased costs in another space. And so we're balancing it out and being really transparent with you in terms of what those changes are. The second piece is that second bullet around vacancies. This is not us not filling those positions or spending money that would otherwise become a position. This is instead recognizing that we had anticipated that we'd have about a 0.75, and it wasn't actually anticipated. It was more like our first time into budgeting this way, where we said we're not going to be at 100%. And so we don't need to ask for funding for 100%. And we took a cautious approach of just less than 1% of salaries to offset, assuming it was vacancy. And so right now we have a higher vacancy rate, heavily in ed techs, and then in just timing of filling positions. right? So Jen Brady, who you heard from a little while ago, started in, as somebody said, single digit weeks, but their position was budgeted to start July 1. And so some of that is savings such as that. So just want to say that so that people don't hear this and think that we are going to sit with these positions vacant on purpose.
Yeah, so here is a view of this based on expense category. And so as the superintendent rightly called out, we're not increasing the budget. The net impact of these changes is 0, but we are moving funds from one expense category to another. And just wanting to share transparently with you what we're doing. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, we are moving money out of personnel and into contracted services. And then we also moved money from supplies to other costs, but the net impact being 0 to our budget. And then if we go to the next slide, this is just a different view of the same data. Instead of by expense category, this is by state categorical. We cannot legally move more than 5% out of any category here. And so this just shows that we are not exceeding that 5% threshold. And this one will kind of show you that we also, we moved them, did the moves between categories that I spoke about in the previous slide, but there's also here some areas where we are moving within personnel. For example, the ed techs came in a little bit higher while the teachers came in a little bit lower. So we did have to do some movement across personnel categories, and that kind of is reflected here in this view of the data. But again, the net impact is 0%. We're just moving the money around where we need it.
And so if I can jump in here, we'd happy to take questions, and then we don't have the exact wording here, but basically we want to move forward to the board these changes, because what we need to do is just get in the habit of any big changes like this to categoricals that we ask for board approval. That's what the policy says, right? That if it's above $50,000 move, that we would just inform you. And so we're just following that. And so we'll get the exact language because we're waiting for that from legal to put in front of the board, hopefully tomorrow. But we'll ask for you as the finance committee to move that forward.
Super. So yeah, so I can make a motion to within the committee to move it to the board, and then as part of that process, if there are questions about that, we can tackle that. Does that work? Super.
Sounds great.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to move this this review of money that's moved from one category to another, requiring board approval. I'm making a motion to move this forward from the committee level to the board level, and I'd be looking for a second. Thank you, Board Member Opperman. All right, so are there questions from committee members about this? Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
2 quick questions. The special ed funds that are being used for contracted services, is that mostly like BHPs?
Speech, occupational therapy, BCBA, those
Okay.
types of positions. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And my other question, it's not even about that. It's about gate receipts in the city-owned fields. So that's minimal. All right, good. Thanks.
Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Just a quick question on a previous slide in reference to what we're paying the state, billing fees. What does that mean? Ignorant.
Yeah, and I may have to ask for more information from our special ed team, but from what I am aware, there are it's related to main care and certain payments that we are required as a district to pay this 11% fee on these payments that are processed for these main care billings.
So it's basically two main care. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or discussion before we vote on the motion? Okay. Also, it looks like, I think Board Member Noor is having some connection issues and has been trying to get back in, but I'm not. Oh, Board Member Noor, hello. Glad you're still with us. Okay. All right, so I am now going to do a roll call vote. The motion is to move this moving of money from one category to another, from us at the committee level over to the full board. Board Member Opperman,
Yes.
Board Member Noor.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Sawtelle.
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so it is unanimous. And we are at 7:21. I know that folks, at least one of us, has another meeting to go to in 9 minutes. Superintendent, I would look to you for thoughts on whether to table the topic of the 5 policy items. We could gather feedback by email, but I know, there's pros and cons to doing that. Certainly we want to be able to not slow down progress for the policy committee. But our next committee meeting is going to be in about 28 days. So want to get your thoughts on that.
Why don't I look at what the policy committee schedule is? These were designed to line up so that it came before. We may have still a little bit of lead time. So let me look at that, and if we'll figure out a way to get feedback.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so that being said, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Board Member Sawtelle, thank you so much. And we're going to do a show of available hands. Wonderful. We are adjourned at 7:23 p.m. Best wishes for all for a lovely rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.